Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and today I'm reviewing Mary Barton by Elizabeth Gaskell. This is a Victorian novel published in 1848 with the subtitle A Tale of Manchester Life. I read this book late last year and I have to say this is possibly my favourite read of 2024. It's definitely my favourite book by Gaskell that I've read so far, and I have previously read her more well-known novel North and South, which is also set in an industrial northern town, as well as her novel Cranford, which is a completely different vibe, very sort of small town, cozy, very little happening sort of a book. I liked Cranford. I didn't really care for North and South, but I absolutely adored Mary Barton, so let me tell you about it. It has been a long time that a novel has genuinely emotionally affected me. And with Mary Barton, I was with the characters from the very first page to the last. That in itself is a feat when it comes to Victorian literature, because we often consider that a more detached sort of writing, something for the brain rather than the heart. In fact, Mary Barton reminded me a lot, not in subject matter or necessarily in style, but in the way that it made me feel. It reminded me a lot of another one of my favourite Victorian novels, The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. So, what's Mary Barton about? Well, you won't be surprised to hear it is about a girl named Mary Barton. And she is the daughter of a widowed mill worker in Manchester. She has lost both her mother and her brother at a young age and is growing up in a time where all the men around her and a lot of the women around her are working in mills and factories. However, that's not what she wants to do, so she manages to get an apprenticeship with a local dressmaker. Her father, in the meantime, is working for the mill and is getting more and more involved in union politics as the story goes on. While the novel focuses on Mary, it really is an ensemble cast type of book. There is quite a few characters around Mary, including her friend Margaret, who also lives with a single father. Then there's the whole Wilson family, who are very close to the Bartons, with Mr. Wilson and Mr. Barton being very close friends. They have a son called Jem, who's been Mary's suitor since their childhoods, and he's also involved in the factory work. He's making a name for himself as an engineer. But all of the characters we meet are working class. They all live in the same part of town. They all have very similar lives. They all have very similar amounts of wealth, and you really get a sense of community when you read about them and their lives. But because Mary is working for this dressmaker, she's taken out of that community during the day, and in fact ends up having a bit of a thing with the son of the factory owner, a young man called Harry Carson, who's obviously living a very different life to her and her friends and family. So as she has this flirtation with this young wealthy man whose father employs most of the people she knows, her childhood sweetheart Jem is not feeling that great about himself. So yes, there is a bit of a love triangle situation going on, but bear with me. Mary Barton is incredible. I'm talking about the book, not the character. But of course the character plays a big part in that. But the reason this novel is so amazing is because from the very first page, you genuinely don't know where the story is taking the reader. Like with Dickens, you get this sense that Gaskell's on a very clear mission to portray the working classes in an attempt at making them more sympathetic to a middle-class reader. That's her audience. This is obviously a very Victorian approach, which feels slightly jarring to me as a modern reader and will feel the same way to you as well. But not to the same extent as I got with North and South. The story and characters I found absolutely gripping. Even though what I've told you about the plot so far is mostly the romance aspect, there is a lot more to it. It has a bit of a thriller aspect as well. There's quite a lot of action happening, quite a lot of violence. It's obviously got massive amounts of politics, with Mary's father being so deeply involved in the workers' union movement. But the book also deals with matters of friendship, of the idea of individuality versus community. It deals with disability. It deals with money issues, obviously. It deals with just human connection. And it does this so seamlessly that by the end you get a really well-rounded idea of real people, which again is incredible in any novel, but particularly in a Victorian novel. The story and characters I found absolutely gripping. There is a lot of tragedy, a lot of suffering, a lot of violence in this book, and Gaskell does not pull any punches. That's what I mean when I say you don't know where the story is taking you, because right from the very first page, a lot of characters die in this book, even once where you're convinced they're going to make it through, where you think there's no way she's going to kill that person off, there's no way she's going to make that person suffer, but you're like, she's setting this one up to be there to the end of the story. You just never know. And yes, sometimes that feels gratuitous. Sometimes that feels like the misery is overtaking the plot in this book. And yet I found it perfectly well balanced. I didn't find it verging towards what we today call poverty porn, which I don't think was a concept in the Victorian era. I just found this an example of perfect storytelling. You're on the edge of your seat all the way through, never knowing what's going to happen to the people that you find yourself getting more and more attached to with every single page. And Gaskell's characters are easy to get attached to, though that doesn't mean that they are all likable. In particular, Mary Barton, the protagonist, is not easy to like. She's not a perfect Victorian heroine in any way. She's quite shallow, she's easily influenced, and she's quite vain, in particular at the beginning of the book. Like any good Victorian heroine, she does learn a lesson or two by the end, as you'd imagine and as you'd expect. In many ways, this is a typical Victorian novel. There's so many moral lessons around reaping what you sow and the importance of making good choices, etc., etc. All of that is as I'd expected. But the book is a lot more radical in its politics than I would have thought going into it. Not just in its harsh portrayals of the lives of factory workers and their families, but also in its fundamental sympathy towards the workers' union movement. Some of you who have read this book might disagree with me on that, in particular with regards to John Barton's character development. John Barton, that's Mary Barton's widowed father, gets progressively more invested in this union, and you get a sense that he's using it in part as a way of getting over the pain of losing his wife and his son and other people in his life who matter to him. As he gets more invested in the union, he gets less interested in his own family. And this radicalization is not shown in a positive light at all. And yet, the author doesn't seem quite capable of condemning his behaviors and actions, even when the narrative itself does. It's certainly more nuanced than I was ready to give the author credit for. The beginning of the book has a sort of disclaimer written by Elizabeth Gaskell that says something like, I wanted to portray the lives of Manchester factory workers, and I'm not saying that one side or the other is correct. I just wanted to show you both sides, that kind of a thing. And I read this and I thought, I'm about to get hit by the full centrist treatment. But no, this genuinely is a radical book of radical ideas, considering it came out in the 1840s. Apart from the class politics, this novel is also surprisingly full of plot. I know, who'd have thought, but this is rich in action of the melodramatic variety, ranging from murders to dramatic boat chases, as well as the aforementioned love triangle and, of course, plenty of family drama. Mary Barton well exceeded my expectations and, in fact, left me wondering why my expectation had been so middling to begin with. I think it's because she has this reputation of being an honourable mentions sort of Victorian author, like a Northern Dickens but not as good. Based on this novel alone, I'm fully of the opinion that she deserves to be named alongside Dickens as one of the greats of Victorian literature. There's nothing further ran about Mary Barton. It's a gripping piece of literature about mid-19th century industrial life. It's heartfelt and sad and gripping and educational all at the same time. It's a fantastic story that deserves all of the glory Dickens gets, and frankly, even a little bit more. This is, as you might have already picked up on, an unconditional recommendation from me, and another unconditional recommendation also for the audiobook read by Juliet Stevenson, who is incredible in all the audiobooks she reads, but in particular if you don't enjoy written down dialects, which isn't my favourite thing to read on paper, the audiobook might be a good choice. She really does bring the characters to life. So if you've read Mary Barton, let me know your thoughts, and please let me know your recommendations for which Elizabeth Gaskell novel I should pick up next. I might even give North and South another go. It's been a few years since I read that. Like I said, I didn't enjoy it particularly the first time round, but maybe I'll be reading it with different eyes now. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!